Welcome to the Estonian Model United Nations info hour on UNSC. We're really happy to see you here. If you have any questions, please direct them to us. But long story short, welcome to the UNSC info hour. My name is Andrey and Ingrid. I am the Secretary General of Estonian Model United Nations, and I'm also a chair in the UNSC committee, which has been throughout the ages one of my most favorite committees. I am joined today by Ingrid Kirp, who is going to introduce herself as well.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ingrid, and I'm a co-chair with Andrey in the UNSC.
All right. So without further ado, let's get going. First and foremost, we're going to tell you a little bit about Estonian Model United Nations and Model United Nations in general. So if you're wondering where you are currently, it's an info hour for Model United Nations, which is an educational role-playing game where you gain personal experience in a simulated diplomacy environment. What that means is that you essentially don't have to worry about all of that bureaucratic mumbo jumbo, securing an internship to get to know international diplomacy and all of those quirky rules of procedures that come with it. You can come to us and experience the joy and thrill of being a real life diplomat without any sort of responsibility and in a completely safe space environment. So that's the cool thing about MUN. We have some specific points that we want to address about our MUN. Ours is high school level, and it's an entry-level simulation. So it's specifically suited for those who are doing this kind of event for the first time. And worldwide, it's a phenomenon. I can only think of Antarctica as the only continent where no MUN has ever taken place, and that is debatable. I just don't have enough data on it. But worldwide, high school and university students alike participate in that. The working language can be any of the official languages of the United Nations. In our case, it's English. And we have new and different formats every year. So we not only have all of those traditional committees such as UNESCO, General Assembly, UNSC, we also have a media team which focuses on reporting international news, and it's very ideology based, I would say. So if you like creative writing and if you like debating on different issues in the public space, you should definitely check out the media team. We also have tried historical committees. Last year's United Nations Security Council, for example, was devoted to the Cuban Missile Crisis. It was really fun, and it allows people to experiment with alternative history. And this year we also have a newcomer, which is ICJ, the International Court of Justice, where you get to be a judge and handle an actual case in international law, which is really, really fun. Of course, we will send you the links where you can get more information. The main landing page for all things EstMUN is maailmakool.ee/en/EstMUN. And we also have our own playlist that's called EstMUN on our YouTube channel, maailmakool. The link is in the chat. You can check it out.
So I hope you're already excited. So this year, the conference is going to be on June 10th until 13th. We hope it's going to be in Tammsalu Gymnasium, because real experience, when you can gather a lot with all the people, it's different. But otherwise, if the situation is going, if it's not going to allow us to do that, then we're doing it online. So we have 5 committees. We have UN General Assembly, and during these 3 days, we are working in committees, represent real UN delegations, and we are doing everything as it is in the UN. So you're wearing formal attire, you're using the language, and you're acting like real diplomats. So you have to, your main goal is to looking for a consensus. So you need to basically, you have to agree on something, all delegates, and you're writing resolutions and articles. Of course, there will be socializing, and in the evenings there are different events to be and having fun.
So we have already mentioned a little bit that we have different scenarios for our conference this year. We have this roadmap, which features both physical hybrid as well as online versions. Decision is likely to be made next week, and they all depend on Estonian government guidelines. And you shouldn't worry about it, because all necessary information and support will be provided beforehand. But we would like to mention this as a general disclaimer that safety of our participants and organizers is and always will be our main priority. It means that currently the most likely scenario is that we are going to have a hybrid conference where some of the committees, mostly with international participants, will be online, and the committees where the participants are mostly, they mostly come from local schools. They will be physically present, but all of that is still work in progress. So you don't have to worry about it, but please be aware that we cannot provide you currently with a fully physical conference, and some adjustments are likely to be made. Maybe for the teachers who have joined in, we would like to mention that participation from one school is unlimited, but we want both students and teachers to be motivated and engaged. So it is, in the end, a little bit of a competition. So we want everyone to have full and engaging experience in that sense.
These are the committees we have this year. The first one is UNFCCC COP. So it's the Conference of the Parties on UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. It might seem complicated topic, or the committee might look complicated, but actually you can, even though if you don't have any previous experience, it's okay to join every committee. So the second one is ICG, which is International Court of Justice. Then we have the media, which is representatives of international media outlets. So basically you are writing different articles about what's going on in our conference. So we have UNSC, which is the UN Security Council, and the UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency. And this week we have committee info hours. If you haven't listened to previous info hours, we are all recording them, and you can look them later and see which is the committee you would like to attend.
So a little bit about conference rules that does apply to our committee, as well as COP and UNHCR. We do have a little bit of, framework, a little bit of rule book that we want everyone to follow at our conference, which includes wearing business attire. We also have a set of rules that involve types of debate and voting procedures, as well as points and motions, and some terminology that is quite specific to the United Nations environment. But we don't want to scare you. We don't want you to worry about it. Not even a little bit, because we have tons of materials that will help you prepare for the conference. We have a number of video tutorials. We have guidebooks, and we have the study guides that are prepared by our chairs. And of course, when you come to the conference, don't expect to be thrusted into the committee floor and start debating from scratch. We, of course, have what's called a mock session, which will help you get into the format and into your role. So there's nothing to worry about. But we have one single thing that we expect from everybody. That's joining our conference and our EstMUN family, and that is being polite and respectful of others. But you should remember that whole conference is about you. It's not us who make the debate. It's not us who make the points. We are just, moderators. We're just people who, help you get on track with the debate, and you are given the main role at the conference. And once again, all needed information will be provided in the info packs. So after you apply and get accepted into the conference, you will receive your committee and the corresponding info pack, where all of those points will be mentioned once again. So there's nothing to worry about. There's just a number of rules that we expect our participants to follow.
So our topic is children in armed conflicts, civil war in South Sudan. So basically, the aim is look into possible solutions to child engagement in armed conflicts in the form of an active case study, all while applying sustainable practices from the realm of international security and exercising the mandate of the world's single most direct and powerful international organ. So this is our topic. If you don't know anything about the topic yet, it's still okay. You can still attend, because you will be provided by information. You can search information before the conference, and it's totally okay. And we are helping you if in any way.
So right now we're going to tell you actually a little bit about the topic itself. Just, a short overview of what you're going to be dealing with if you get accepted into UNSC. Once again, the topic is children in armed conflicts, civil war in South Sudan. And the conflict itself took place in an African country, in South Sudan, which is a very young state. It's actually the youngest member of the United Nations, admitted in 2010. And as you can imagine, being a young state and facing a civil war 3 years after you get accepted into the United Nations is quite devastating and quite a harsh experience. The civil war lasted for 7 years, with an armistice agreement signed in August 2020. However, the situation remains quite unstable because quite a lot of South Sudan's state institutions have been simply shattered. The administrative division of South Sudan in itself has been put into question, and there are still debates whether South Sudan should be split into several autonomous regions, or whether South Sudan can stay afloat, so to speak, without international intervention. The main reason for the conflict is local power struggle that emerged from largely President Salva Kiir's authority and his policies, as well as discontent between the military and the ruling regime. But in our context, the most important thing is that there have been more than 17,000 children recruited by all parties as soldiers. And compared to conflicts in other regions, this is a staggering number. And it is a problem that is on the agenda for a lot of sub-Saharan African states. So we have places like Democratic Republic of the Congo, we have Chad, we have Eritrea, we have all those places where either active or so-called frozen conflicts are taking place, where skirmishes happen between different armed groups, etc., etc. And the problem is largely in the fact that a lot of states simply go into anarchy, full chaos mode. And in that sense, it's really hard for the international community to intervene and to apply practices of international justice and security mechanisms, mainly because not a lot of Western countries have interests in that region, or war simply serves its purpose, further destabilizing the situation and keeping the region open to devastating foreign influence. So that should be kept in mind once again. However, there is a United Nations peacekeeping mission that's active in South Sudan currently, UNMISS, and this is one thing that we will have to tackle. So basically, our goal is not to solve the conflict. Our goal is to implement mechanisms and see if existing mechanisms are still working, if we need to make up something else, or if we need to leave the region altogether as an international community. So we have to take a look at the data, we have to take a look at the situation in itself, and decide as this 15 member state body if we should continue the current policy or if we should change anything. And of course, depending on the geopolitical situation, the positions of different member states will vary. So now talking a little bit about the mandate of the United Nations Security Council, as we have said before, the United Nations Security Council is perhaps the single most powerful international political body in all of the world. So it's the only United Nations organ that can actually utilize direct action in the form of sanctions, peacekeeping operations, or all-out military interventions if the situation requires that. As we have mentioned before, the United Nations Security Council's mandate also allows creating mechanisms for prosecuting war criminals and further investigating the situation in different regions of the world. Perhaps the most known are the International Tribunal for former Yugoslavia, as well as Rwanda, that have been recently combined into the residual mechanism for prosecution in former Yugoslavia and Rwanda, because there are not a lot of war criminals left to prosecute, but they're still active. And therefore, the United Nations Security Council, mainly owing to its vast military powers, has the single authority in the United Nations to issue binding resolutions. Because if you take a look at all other committees, UNESCO, General Assembly, etc., their resolutions are de facto and de jure recommendations. They are not enforced by literally anything or anyone. The United Nations Security Council carries a special purpose, and it has this special power to actually enforce its decisions. And behind the scenes, the United Nations Security Council is this body that allows world's major powers to confirm and clarify the interests of the international community. So by taking a look at decisions of the United Nations Security Council, we can actually decide which way the international community is going security-wise, what issues are prioritized, and what situations the international community is keeping track of. And if one of the member states wants to promote something, the United Nations Security Council is perhaps the best place they can go to. For example, in Estonia case, as you may know, Estonia is currently a non-permanent member of the Security Council, and Estonia has been largely pushing issues of freedom of speech, media, as well as cybersecurity, which has not been a case in many of the previous years. So keep that in mind. And we're just going to talk a little bit about special powers that go with the United Nations Security Council. So even though the conflict that we're taking a look at is officially over, a crisis may arise at any time. And by any time, I mean literally any time. And solving a crisis requires rapid response, strategic thinking, and a little bit of creativity. Why we say a little bit of creativity? It's because imagine that you're simulating this debate on this topic, and suddenly either real or fictional news come in that the situation is escalating, and you need to drop everything and tackle the issue at hand. And this is why we say that UNSC is perhaps a more challenging committee, but at the same time, it's much more fun, because you get to not only be a diplomat who does all the paperwork and crafts, resolutions, addresses different kinds of previous documents and papers. They can also be the big guy behind the seat and actually, start drafting maybe even some military action. So that's the fun part about our committee. And of course, let's mention the elephant in the room. We have the P5, United States, United Kingdom, France, Russia, and China, which are all countries that have veto power in the United Nations Security Council. So if any decision is made in the UNSC, it has to be approved by all of the P5 members. So if at least one of them votes against, the resolution is automatically discarded. And therefore, reaching a consensus in the United Nations Security Council might be a little bit more tricky. But once again, if you feel like you're up to the challenge, and if you feel like you want to try it out and be the big guy, then our committee is all for you.
So how to prepare for the conference? We are sending you the info packs, so you just need to read the info packs and prepare for the work. As we already said, it's not necessary that you need to know everything right now. And as Andrey already told, it is quite complicated topic, but still it is a lot of fun when you actually find something how to solve the conflicts, even though it is already happened, and you can prevent the next ones. So you need to decide your committee preferences. If it's our committee or if it's another committee, you still have the time to find out which one do you like. And you can register until next week on Monday. We are going to upload all the video info hours until this one and all the other ones on Saturday, so you can check all the info hours. And then we just want you to register. Definitely check out links in the chat. There are these recordings and the virtual exhibition. You can find them on the chat. Yeah, and question time.
If you have any questions, feel free to ask away either in the chat or unmute yourself and use your mic. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for this good overview and the presentation. Can I ask, like, can you tell us who will be the non-member states in the committee, or are you not allowed to tell us? Because the time period of 2013 until 2020 is pretty long, and yes, non-member states.
Okay, so that is a really good question. Thank you. Thank you for asking that. Actually, as long as we're not dealing with the historical committee, we try to incorporate the member states that are the current members of the UNSC in real life, in the real United Nations. But in this case, it is also rational and quite possible that we might want to invite an observer state to participate in the debate, maybe as a non-voting member. In this case, it would be rational to include South Sudan along with other members of the real UNSC, but we're still deciding on that because the balance largely depends on what states will be chosen for other committees and how many applications we are going to get. And the choice of member states is very often based on how flexible and how interesting we want to make it for both this committee and the General Assembly that will gather on the last day. So I hope it helps. Do we have any more questions?
Maybe, hello, can I ask? So maybe there was kind of a weird question, but can you compare your work or what you do to the charity? I mean, somehow you help people. And how do you suppose that? Like, even if you're talking about the, for example, army, can it somehow be as a charity which helps people?
Okay, so this is a really interesting question. I think it goes a little bit into the political realm, but the UNSC is often one of those organizations which doesn't use the charity model very often, so to speak, because when we think of the things that UNSC does and authorizes, it's usually things such as military interventions, no-fly zones, peacekeeping, you know, the blue hats with the rifles, and the donut model, so to speak, is not really applicable to UNSC. So we have, you know, we have carrots and sticks. In Russian, it's called donuts and whips. So UNSC is not really a carrot type organization. UNSC is all about the stick. So when it comes to international military action or taking direct action, then it's really hard to think about you know, charity and providing aid relief, which is usually the realm of the UNHCR, UNICEF, and a couple of other United Nations organizations, not to mention ECOSOC. But it's a really interesting one. It kind of makes us think about how wide and how encompassing the mandates of UN bodies should be. So maybe if you manage to incorporate some kind of aid relief along with international security mechanisms, that would be judicially speaking a very complicated but a very interesting solution. So thank you for asking that.
Thank you for the answer.
So we have also received one question in the chat. Should we create a less bureaucratic council? That is a really good question, and it's probably going to be the topic of my thesis, because both me and Ingrid, we are studying politics and governance here in Estonia in Tartu University, and I'm still yet to write my thesis. And this is one of the most, interesting things that we kind of learn about and we tackle in our day-to-day lectures, especially when it comes to international law and international security. Yes, you're correct. There has been a lot of critique when it comes to the role of the UNSC in the realm of international security. Sometimes it's seen as a body that's there just to advance the Western ideal of democracy and the Western view on international security. Some people just think it's outdated because it was put in place after World War II, and the geopolitical situation has changed significantly. And by significantly, I mean capital S significantly since that. So it's been 75 years, even more. So there have been several calls for a reform of the United Nations Security Council to make it both less bureaucratic and more effective in solving international crises and actually helping prevent future conflicts. But in that sense, it's an imperfect world we live in, and we sadly have to abide by the only framework we have that's keeping this almost century-old status quo alive. So good question, good point. Sadly, we haven't addressed the reform of the United Nations Security Council at EstMUN, because this is way too complicated of an issue, and it involves cooperation between several UN bodies. But perhaps some conferences at a university level definitely do tackle that issue. So good question. Thank you once again. Any more questions? Seeing that we have no more questions, we would like to thank you once again for coming to this rather short, but we hope informative and useful info hour for you. And we really hope that you also give other committees a look, including the media team and the ICJ. And we hope that even if something happens, you learned something new today. But we, bottom line, we encourage you to apply to our conference and see how it looks like in a simulated environment and put all of your wonderful thoughts to action. So once again, thank you for coming. Thank you for asking questions, and hopefully see you at EstMUN 2021.